Mark of the Beast, the tale of Bianca and Mark. They had been the best of friends for as long as they could remember. They lived in a big city, where they attended the same church. Bianca sang in the choir and had a beautiful voice. Mark worked with the audio ministry and always walked around with a microphone and camera crew, asking people, "What did you get out of church today?" He could always depend on the adults for good remarks, good footage, and even some of the young people too. But for the most part, the young people were always clowning around and having fun on camera. From a young age, their parents had them attend church every Sunday. It was a routine neither of them enjoyed, and as they grew older, their disdain for church only intensified. It was amazing. They had so many people fooled by their church behavior and participation. But now and then, someone would approach them to tell them they could see them struggling with the faith. Bianca, as well as Mark, would try to assure them of their love for God. But it wasn't true. Mark was a star athlete known for his deadly and accurate three-point shooting on the basketball court. His local popularity soared with every game-winning shot, and he reveled in the attention. On the other hand, Bianca was a cheerleader and scholar, captivating the crowd with her energy and science community with her brain. Together, they were the dynamic duo of their high school, a pair everyone admired. Strangely enough, though, they were not a couple, but rather just the best of friends. Despite their achievements, the two often lamented their forced church attendance. They would sit through the sermons, bored and uninterested, waiting for the service to end so they could resume their lives. Oh yes, they were impressed with themselves. However, they frequently confided in each other, expressing their impatience to finish school and go off to college so they wouldn't have to attend church as much. One sunny afternoon, while they were at school, walking through the halls with other young people calling out their names, hoping to get a shout-out from the campus elites, something extraordinary happened. It was a day like any other. Students laughing, closing locker doors, teachers preparing lessons until the atmosphere shifted. A strange sensation filled the air, and in an instant, chaos erupted. People vanished. People, literally, vanished. Clothes are on the ground, and personal belongings are scattered everywhere. Where did the people go? Bianca and Mark stood frozen in disbelief. The rapture, an event they had heard about but never believed in, had occurred, and they were left behind. Panic set in as the reality of the situation dawned on them. Kids and adults can be heard screaming on the phone, "Are you okay? Answer your phone. Call me back. Mom, Dad, what is going on?" There was total chaos. Everyone was running out of the building, heading for their cars, and others were running down the street. They were in such a panic that they could not compute their surroundings. Clothes were on the ground outside. Cars were still running as they had impacted the side of buildings with no one behind the wheel. People were missing everywhere. The world as they knew it was changing right before their eyes. The world grew increasingly confusing for many in the following days. But many knew the truth. The Antichrist. He rose to power, promising peace and order amidst the turmoil. As people completed what food they had on hand at home, the Antichrist declared control over all food distribution centers, FDCs. He no longer called them grocery stores. Bianca and Mark's world was turned upside down as their entire families had been raptured to Jesus. They were on their own and alone, navigating areas where their parents were their caregivers and protection. Bianca, Mark, and other survivors struggled to find enough to eat. As their resources dwindled, they faced a difficult choice: take the mark of the beast or risk starving. Adults and other teens who had been left behind tried to persuade them not to take the mark, reminding them of what they'd been taught in church. They warned of the eternal consequences, but Bianca and Mark were desperate. They couldn't see any other way to survive. After all, they only came to church and participated because their parents required them to do so. Jesus was not in their hearts. Despite the warnings, they decided to take the mark. Upon arriving at the imprinting center, Bianca and Mark saw a long line of people waiting for their turn to receive the mark of the beast. There were old people, young people, and entire families. Some of the kids were crying because they were so hungry, but the parents did not have the mark, so they could not purchase food from the distribution center. One mom could be heard saying,
"Don't cry, honey. Mom is headed straight to the FDC as soon as we leave, and we will be okay. Jesus will understand."
It was so peculiar. As Bianca and Mark made their way through the line, they kept asking each other, "Are you sure? Are we really doing this?" They continued comforting and reassuring one another. No sooner had they done so, just as the Bible says, than they heard these loud voices from outside, sounding like they were being broadcast through the building's PA system. "Inhabitants of Earth, inhabitants of Earth, hear us!" Bianca and Mark ran outside along with everyone in the building. All the people outside were looking up in the sky and pointing. The sky was filled with angels flying in all different directions and patterns. After some time, they began preaching. The angels' voices echoed throughout the land, telling the inhabitants of Earth to believe in Jesus and not to take the mark because, in doing so, their souls would be lost forever. The words struck fear into Bianca and Mark's hearts, and at that moment they realized the gravity of what they had done. Overwhelmed with regret, they wept and cried, driving erratically through traffic, trying to make it back to the church. They tried calling some of the people, but there was no cell service for them because no one had taken the mark yet. After what seemed like an eternity, they arrived at the church. They stepped into the sanctuary. Everyone came to a dead silence. Breaking that silence, someone asked,
"Did you hear the message of the angels?"
Please tell us you didn't get the mark.
It was as if someone signaled Bianca and Mark. They fell to their knees simultaneously and began to scream and cry, "How can we fix this? How can we remove the mark?" The people shook their heads, their faces filled with sorrow, telling them,
Your judgment has been set.
The mark is permanent.
Your souls are lost forever.
As the realization sank in, Bianca and Mark were consumed with despair. They had made a choice they could never undo, and the weight of that choice bore down on them. Surrounded by others who did not share their fate, they cried together, mourning the loss of their souls. In the end, they learned too late the importance of faith and the consequences of turning away from it. Their story serves as a somber reminder of the choices we make and the paths we choose to follow. Don't be like Bianca and Mark. Embrace your faith and learn all you can to keep your soul from the position that Bianca and Mark put their souls in, eternal separation from God.